meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.east.eastham-ma.gov. We'll start with select board information. Bob, anything? I just have one. We had a lovely tea at the Council on Aging today. Jerry was one of the servers for a high tea to kick off Pride Month. And next,
I didn't spill
Monday.
anything.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, next Monday is the community dinner.
Yeah, Monday, well, next Monday, there's a community dinner at the library. I think it's closed now for signups. And it's pretty, I think they have at least 60 people, so they got a big return. And the Pride Parade will be in Orleans next Saturday at 10 a.m. So hope to see a bunch of people out there. All right, public information of things not on the agenda. I have one individual, Don Emerson, coming to talk to us about some work the Cape Cod Commission's been doing.
Yes, thanks very much. I'm Don Emerson from Herringbrook Road. I sit on the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, or what's called the Vision Zero Advisory Committee of the Cape Cod Commission. The commission is the designated
Yeah, is his mic on?
agency for the federal
Is the
government
mic
in
on?
terms of grant making and recognition.
Is your mic on? Is the green light on?
Try now.
Does that work better? That's the
No.
low. Right, should I just? I'll speak loud. How's that?
There you go. Yeah, people at home will be able to hear
This any
you.
better? Okay.
There we go.
All right. So I'm Don Emerson from Herringbrook Road. I was appointed to the Vision Zero Advisory Committee of the Cape Cod Commission. This is a part of a federally sponsored study that the Commission is undertaking as a designated planning agency for the Cape with the goal of eliminating fatal accidents on streets and roads and highways throughout the country, but this particular study focused on the Cape. And so while I reside in Eastham, I'm not representing Eastham, but it turns out I'm the only Eastham resident on the advisory committee, so I thought I would share with you that the plan that this group has put together by the commission and their consultant over the past year or so is now out for public comment. The draft is available on the Cape Cod Commission website if you search on Vision Zero. It has extensive data on Cape-wide issues, but also Eastham, the number of crashes that have been in Eastham over the last 6 years, the number of fatalities, whether they're involving bicycles and pedestrians or off-road crashes, they're characterized in there. And the plan also comes forward with some suggestions on things that the town could do or the state could do in order to reach the goal of zero fatalities, zero serious accidents where people's lifestyle is changed as a result. So I commend it to you to take a look at. Comments are due on the 12th. Just 10 days away. The hope is that it will be adopted on the 16th so that grant applications can go forward in the next cycle of applications. So I don't know if that gives you much time. Anyone can comment, but I would think the town might want to offer comments, I guess, for two reasons. One, because the commission is looking to the towns because you own the streets for the most part and manage those streets and maintain those streets. And so they're looking to the towns that own the streets who can do something about whether it's physical improvements to the streets or policy kinds of education and enforcement and so on. They're looking to the towns to pick up the ball and run with it. And secondly, because of the grants that are available to projects that are included in the plan. So if there are projects that the town would like to advance with federal funds, this would be an opportunity to get on the list. So
All right, thank you so much,
thanks to share
Don.
that. Thanks for letting me share that.
And he sent me an email with the link, and I'll send it out to everyone, and maybe we can get it on the website. All right,
you.
thank you very much, Don. All right, anyone else, public information that's not on the agenda? All right, I will turn it over to our town manager, Jackie Beebe.
I'm just going to go up here so that hopefully everyone can hear and see.
rough with the, go out a little more?
Yeah, just so you can see it wants to talk and then see you better.
Going out a little more.
Okay.
There we go. Now they know it's you. So, good luck.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Jackie Beebe, Town Manager. Most of you know me. Can you hear me? Yeah.
No, is it on?
It is on. Okay. So welcome to this is our fourth and final full information session on the wastewater project. We will be doing other things over the next month, but we won't have another formal presentation like this one. I'm sorry, we had to move to Town Hall because we haven't been able to tape at the library. And so the last information sessions have been on Zoom, and we have the Zoom recording, but we don't have a good tape of it. So that's why we're here tonight. I'm sorry, it's a little less comfy than the library, but I thought it was really important that at least one of the sessions was fully taped and we could replay it for the rest of the month. Each time we present, we add a little content based on comments or questions or concerns based on the prior meeting. So they are getting a little longer, but I think we'll be maybe 40 minutes or so with the presentation. Then we'll take questions, do a question and answer period. If we can't answer all your questions, then we'll get your name and number. We'll call you back and get information to you. After tonight and prior to town meeting, we will be having office hours, so they're drop-in times at either the library or the COA. We're doing some in the early evening, we're doing one on a Saturday, we're doing some in the morning or the afternoon. So we've picked various times and days to do that. If anyone has a question they don't want to ask in public, but they want to ask something, they can come and pop in and we will answer your questions. So the other thing we've organized is a sheet that's going to go out tomorrow, which basically goes through the targeted watershed management plan. And it's going to come out in an email or a flash because it's important that you receive it electronically because it's fully annotated. So you could go to any of the links from an email and go right to the document or the piece of information that you're looking for. I'm sorry we haven't had this sooner, but I think it will give people who really want to take a deep dive into one subject or other, they can do that. And so that's available, or it will be going out tomorrow. The warrant is also for town meeting on the 23rd, will be going out tomorrow. It's being mailed, it started to be mailed today. So you should get it probably by the end of this week. That also has the wastewater booklet in it that will have more information and also our contact information if you want to reach out to us. And so I think that's it. So now I will introduce our team, and then I have a couple of intro remarks to make as well. But going from the farthest away from me, Rich Bienvenu, our Assistant Town Manager, Hillary Greenberg Lemos, I keep missing her name, I don't know why I do this, our Director of Health and the Environment. She was previously Jane Crowley, so if those of you who have been around a long time remember that Jane was always talking about wastewater, well, now it's Hillary. Jackie Tupper, who's an engineer and the project manager from Environmental Partners Group, which is now the Apex Company. They have been working for the town of Eastham since 2005. They were the project managers and the engineers for our water system, and now on with Ziad Carey, also, I'm sorry, the senior principal engineer for Apex EPG. They are now doing two things for us on the wastewater side. They are designing the collection and treatment system and the pump houses, pump stations that will bring the wastewater back and forth to the treatment plant, and they are also the OPM, or the owner's project manager, for the wastewater project. If you go online and you look at the targeted watershed management plan, you will see that most of our historical data, and it still is coming in, is from GHD. which is another engineering firm that we've been working with since 2013 on wastewater. They are designing the treatment plant, and they're still involved in the project. It's just that we didn't want to have, there's a lot of them involved in the project, so. And behind me, Kayla Urquhart. Kayla is our new coordinator of public information. She's going to be getting public engagement materials and just in general materials about wastewater, but also about everything townwide. We've added the position, and I think it's going to be really great in terms of our ability to communicate better. So I think it's important, I'm ready for the, I think what I haven't talked about in prior meetings is the journey that this has been. And I think I wanted to skip over that part because I don't know why. I think it's boring maybe. I don't know. But the clean water journey that we've had has been on the public water supply for water and also the clean water for our rivers, estuaries, environment, wastewater. And it's been long and it's been methodical. And by long, I mean 20 years long, 16 years for wastewater. We had in 2007, we presented to town meeting the first full-scale water system, public water system to this community. And it was supposed to be $76 million, and it did not pass. So in 2009, we did a study that decided that the water system should be a priority because people voted no in 2007 and they said maybe we should do wastewater first, or what about wastewater? So we did this engineering study and it came all the way around to water again. And before I go on, I want to just pivot a little bit and let Rich talk about for a second what it cost us to have all those no votes on water and to not do it until 2014 and 2015, because it's pretty important to this discussion tonight. Rich?
As we were going over the timeline, the Finance Committee had been asking some questions, so we took the opportunity to dovetail the timeline that Jackie was recreating from the water project to what that meant to town finances. And as you can see on the screen, the ultimate passage of the town-wide water system in 2014 and then another piece in 2015 totaled just under $131 million versus it could have been $76 million for the equivalent system just 9 years earlier. In addition, in 2007, if it had passed, we would have qualified for the state SRF program and received 0% financing. We got, in 2015, did qualify for the SRF program again, but at a 2.6% rate. Very low rate, but a substantial difference. That difference cost $70 million over the life of the project. So all told, not passing the water project in 2007 has cost this community and our taxpayers $125 million for a 9-year delay, which translates to today roughly about $700 for the average valued home. $700 would cover the cost of every override that we've done in the last 10 years. Jackie.
Thanks, Rich. So when we say that we wanted to put this before you now because it's a pivotal decision, we really mean it. It's a pivotal decision. And I know I'm not here to tell you to vote yes or no. I just want you to be aware of how important this particular vote is and why. So we've been working on both water and wastewater, as you can see, and EPG has been involved in all of those processes. But I want you to look at the wastewater side. From 2013 to 2025, we have had votes at town meeting every single year that have set aside money for wastewater. Some of them have been in the capital plan. 3 of them have been separate debt exclusion overrides. And they've been very specific to designing this TWMP and getting us where we needed to be. As a matter of fact, in 2019, that was the first time that wastewater appeared as a capital project for $130 million, it was listed at that time, on our capital plan, and it's been there ever since. So I guess I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but this is 16 years of planning, studying, analysis, water testing that went on even before that because of the water system. We're using some of the same sites and water tests that we've used in the past. In 2022, you guys did vote for the final watershed plan and site development. In 2023, for the design, engineering, and the treatment plant for the current site. So we are roughly, just so you know, a little over $8 million in to wastewater as we stand here now. And I guess my final thought before I turn it over to Hillary is that what we're presenting to you is in a plan that has hundreds of pages, perhaps 1,000 pages. I don't know. The appendixes are very long. And this is a snapshot. What we're giving you is sort of an overall snapshot of what we're planning. It doesn't mean that it's all there is. It's just, it's all that we can present to you without you asking more questions or doing more reading, okay? So this is the final plan that's been submitted to the state for review. This is the plan that they've accepted. And I'm going to turn it over to Hillary.
Good evening. I'm Hillary, the Director of Health and Environment here in Eastham. And I also am going to start with a brief history, just to go over some other items that Jackie didn't mention that we have done leading up to today. So in 2009, I think it was late 2008, early 2009, Eastham began working with Stearns & Wheeler on a wastewater management plan. After they evaluated the public health and environmental risks, they decided that at that time, a public water system should come first, and then we would move into wastewater. So we began the water system, looking at that in 2009 to 2012. The Cape Cod Commission was designated also at that time to identify nitrogen-sensitive areas, establish nitrogen reduction goals, and find paths to implement changes. This resulted in what you may know as the 208 plan. There was a lot of talk about that several years back and what that meant for Cape Cod. So it was really Cape Cod's water quality management plan, and each town was responsible to mitigate nitrogen and nutrients in their own communities. In 2011, Eastham completed a pond action plan. So I have put in some additional dates and times in here that I think were important for you to recognize some of the other projects that we have undertaken. So the pond action plan was created in 2011. It's available on the website for anyone that wants to see it. Last week, we had a pond workshop where we detailed the state of Eastham ponds. That information is also on the website, and there's a lot of good information there. In 2012 to 2016, we began to identify strategies more specifically to reduce the nutrients in our ponds and estuaries. We began design and construction of the water system, as Jackie had said, and our wastewater efforts focused on Boat Meadow, Herring River, Wellfleet Harbor, Rock Harbor, Nauset Harbor, Salt Pond, and Town Cove. At the same time, we treated herring and great ponds with alum to reduce the phosphorus levels and deal with some of the algae and degradation we've seen in there. In 2017 to 2022, we began a planning process that built upon all of the prior work. It added in the Massachusetts Estuaries Project, which is where our TMDLs come out of. That's our nitrogen loading for the harbors. We developed the TWMP, which began to outline specific strategies that we were going to use to mitigate the Nauset estuary. We also began treatment for Phragmites in schoolhouse minister ponds and followed up with that every 2 years thereafter. We hydro-raked in schoolhouse minister pond, and we began aeration, which is still going on today. In 2023, town meeting approved money to design a collection and treatment facility. And in 2024, we completed the targeted watershed management plan. We received a certificate from the Secretary of Environmental Affairs. At the same time, that's when DEP enacted their new Title V regulations requiring upgrades to innovative alternative systems in nitrogen-sensitive areas. We filed a letter of intent with the state to indicate our plan to obtain a watershed permit and began working towards our nutrient mitigation goals. And finally, we contracted with Apex Engineering and GHD to begin design of the collection and treatment system. We've also undertaken some stormwater projects around Schoolhouse Minster and salt ponds to manage the inflow of nutrients from stormwater. I think next slide. Thank you. So why do we want a wastewater management plan? This seems like a basic question with a basic response, but what we understand today is that the effects of nutrient loading and bacterial contamination span the spectrum from environmental to socioeconomic impacts and have direct consequences to our culture, our health, our economy, and our tax base. The things that are most important to me are probably the environmental concerns, the public health concerns, and the regulatory compliance. So what we don't want to see is increased shellfish closures, beach closures. We run the risk of pollutant surges during storm events, which are becoming more frequent as time goes by. Low dissolved oxygen, which can lead to fish kills and degradation of critical habitats, increased vegetation and algae, and various public health advisories. In addition to those environmental concerns is the regulatory compliance piece. We are bound by the state to meet these TMDLs because they have been established and approved by the state. And they're requirements of the Clean Water Act, so we want to be in compliance with the laws. This is our roadmap, the Targeted Watershed Management Plan. It's available on our website. Jackie has annotated it. We have all of the appendices available for those that want to dive deep. This has been reviewed and approved by the Mass Department of Environmental Protection. It's been through MEPA, which is the Environmental Policy Act, and it allows us to preserve our environment while allowing for some sustainable growth and future development. And I am going to get back to that in 1 second. It outlines the construction of a collection and treatment system. It talks about stormwater mitigation projects. It talks about permeable reactive barriers, IA systems, shellfish aquaculture, and of course, collaboration with our neighboring communities. So we share the watersheds with Wellfleet to the north and Orleans to the south, and we do meet with them regularly to see what options are available to collaborate. Getting back to the sustainable growth and future development, I think it's important to understand that along with the SRF funding, we're required to have a growth neutral regulation or bylaw, and this maintains existing levels of development. So putting in a collection treatment system is not, it doesn't equal an increase in development in any way, because we know that we can't increase our dwelling units beyond what we have already put in for. There are specific septic loads we're bound to and demands on infrastructure, and the focus is on our current need because of the capacity and infrastructure limitations that we have in place. So I think it's important to delve a little bit into that. Next slide. So this is the nuts and bolts. This is phase one. This is what we're bringing before you. The green areas are our phase one collection area. It extends around Salt Pond. It extends from Old Orchard to Nauset, Schoolhouse and adjoining roads. It also extends down Route 6 to Brackett, Holmes, and it includes Tea Time. There are 786 properties in phase one. And we expect that it'll take 3 years from start to finish to complete the collection and the treatment plan. There is an interactive map online where you can go and pop in your property and see if you are in Phase 1. So I know we fielded a lot of questions from the public on whether they're in or they're out. That tool is available, or certainly reach out to the office. So where is the treatment plant located and why? This is another common question that we've heard from a lot of residents. People are concerned about their neighborhoods, and understandably so. So we did evaluate several properties before we landed on the DPW site. We looked at Sandy Meadow, Tea Time, the North Eastham Sand Pit, the Cape Cod Children's Place, and the DPW site. What we found was that each site had some complexities. The Children's Place wasn't suitable for a treatment plant because of the topography of the lot. It may be useful in the future for recharge areas. Tea Time, the Sand Pit, and the DPW are all in the Zone 2 of our public water supply, and we know we have to be extra cautious around our drinking water supplies. Tea Time also had capacity issues, and the Sand Pit had capacity issues as well, and it would have required a lot of disturbing of undisturbed areas, so a lot of clearing would be needed there. But most importantly, the reason we landed at the DPW site was on the next slide. We're required to do hydrogeologic testing to see how the water travels, where it travels, and what the effects are. So what you can see from this slide is that the transfer station site, when we put all of the recharge there, it does not reach the District G well or the Nauset Regional High School well, and it takes 29 to 125 years to reach the District H well. The other two locations, Tea Time and the Sand Pit, reaches the other wells much sooner than the transfer station site. So really, the transfer station site is the most environmentally appropriate site to put this. Next slide. So we have met with a number of abutters. We've spoken to a lot of people. And we've discussed the whys, the wheres, the history. So as far as neighborhood impact, we have done a lot to reduce the impact to the neighborhood and to address some of their concerns. Obviously, we can do a lot, but there will still be some concerns, I think, even once we're done talking about what we're going to do. So to mitigate the impact, we've moved the buildings to the far end of the property, away from Old Orchard Road. The nearest building to Old Orchard Road will be a football field and a half away, or 500 feet. We've put the treatment building back behind the operations building so that the treatment building is the farthest away from Old Orchard Road. That's generally where the noise and the odors would come from. Sitting in front of that is the operations building. We're utilizing state-of-the-art technology in the construction, so we'll have odor control, we'll have sound baffles to minimize those impacts. And we're going to reconstruct the buffer zone between Old Orchard Road and the DPW parcel and the bike trail on the back. So we're going to put in a vegetative buffer, so that should hopefully alleviate some concerns as well. New trees and shrubs will act as a natural buffer to mitigate some of the visual impacts and the sound. The treatment building, which is the one farthest back, will be 150 feet by 90 feet roughly. Sitting in front of that will be the operations building at 115 feet by 55 feet. The buildings have a nice design and a look to them, so it shouldn't be awful to look at. It'll actually look quite nice. We are going to remove the sludge and grit, which is one of the processes that Jackie Tupper is going to get into, inside the building in an enclosed area, so that will cut down on odor. We're not accepting sewage like Orleans does, where they receive hauling trucks. We're not doing that here in Eastham, and I think that's a big cause for concern. And our plant will receive all of its wastewater through underground piping, so you're not going to see and hear the wastewater flowing into the building. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jackie to describe the processes.
Hi, everyone. I just want to go through the next couple of slides and give some more technical details on the treatment plant. So this first slide is just showing what the building will look like. It will be two separate buildings. The front building, half will be what's called the operations area, which is where we'll have all the offices for the wastewater staff, conference room, things like that, and the filtration treatment. In the back building, that's where we'll have the headworks room, tanks, SBR basins. Most of the treatment happens in that back building. And it also just lists the size. So the front building is 115 by 55, and the back building is 150 by 90. And the pictures on the left are actually also designed by GHD. They're from Mashpee, and we've decided to kind of match that look on the outside to try to keep the Cape Cod or match the character of the area instead of making it look like some type of industrial plant. This next slide just goes over the whole treatment process. So as Hillary showed, that phase 1 map is the collection system, and we're looking at upwards of 80,000 feet of pipe mixed between gravity collection and low pressure, depending on topography. From there, the wastewater will enter into the main pipes we're looking at right now 5 different pump stations throughout town. And from there, we'll design and we'll have force mains that pump it into the treatment plant in one location. So from the collection system, it all goes into the treatment plant, and it will start in the headworks room, which is where you'll have the grit and sand removal, manual bar racks to remove things like rags, and then that grit is going to be removed off-site to a disposal location. From there, it will flow into what's called a pre-equalization tank, and that's just basically because wastewater flow is going to vary throughout the day and at different times, and the plant's not always going to be running. So if it enters that first tank, we can start aerating it and then wait for enough wastewater. So in that process, like I mentioned, we'll start aerating it, meaning we're adding oxygen into the wastewater, and that's what allows the bacteria in the wastewater to use that oxygen and start breaking down a lot of the organic matter and produce like the byproducts like water, carbon dioxide. So from that pre-equalization basin, it will go into the SBR tanks, and those are the main kind of treatment works. And in the SBR basins, we're also aerating and then adding polyaluminum chloride, which is just a chemical that allows the water more coagulate and then to settle the bottom and become the waste activated sludge. So after that treatment process, like most of the water is going to go to the filtration building and go through the filters to remove the total suspended solids. But the waste from the SBRs is going to be pumped into the aerobic digester, and that's where they'll also have more aeration, remove a lot of the water from the sludge, and then allow those bacteria in the activated sludge to further create that sludge, which would then be trucked off-site. From the filters, it will go through UV disinfection to remove the pathogens, and we opted for that over chlorine to save chemical and just be more efficient. And then from the UV disinfection process, it will go into sand beds where it's discharged basically into the ground, and sand beds meaning it's pretty much just sand. And I think this slide is just kind of a brief explanation of we went with sequencing batch reactors due to the capital cost savings. It allowed more flexibility and control, fewer mechanical equipment, and made the operation easier. And then the next couple of slides just addressing some of the noise, odors, things like that. So in terms of odors, there are 3 main locations that we wanted to highlight. So when the wastewater enters the headworks room, obviously that's a large area where you're going to have that odor because it's raw wastewater. But that building is enclosed, and we'll have an HVAC system that's pulling out the air and sending it to odor control unit on the back of the far back building, and that will go through a granulated activated carbon filter to remove that odor. Then the SBR process tanks, right now we're looking into the design. Typically they're open air just for ease of maintenance, sampling, easier operation. That interface with the air helps with the oxygen transfer. And they don't smell because of the aeration and the getting rid of those anoxic conditions, which is where you would have hydrogen sulfide. It's not creating that odor with keeping the dissolved oxygen high in the water. But we are looking into potentially covering that and connecting it into the odor control unit. And kind of the third main area is the aerobic digesters. So that's where, the SBRs, it's mostly water, whereas the digesters, it's mostly that activated sludge. So that raw sludge and organic matter will have odor issues. So that room is also being enclosed and connected to that GAC unit in the back. In terms of noise, so you have the process blowers. That's what adds the oxygen into the wastewater. Those will be enclosed and have noise attenuating units. And we're also looking just in the building design, the insulation to prevent any noise from reaching outside of the building. In terms of truck traffic, you'll have it mostly be from removing the sludge, which we're looking at. GHD mentioned 2 to 3 times per week under phase 1 and potentially daily under phase 2. And I guess just a side note for phase 1 and phase 2, the plant right now is being designed for both. So the footprint won't get larger with phase 2. And we'll have the sequencing batch reactors alternate, and then one of the equalization tanks will become an SBR later at phase 2. So you won't see more traffic or footprint with the larger building. And then lastly, the generators, those will be outside in an enclosure, and those will only kick on when there's a loss of power to the building. In terms of traffic, so you have the delivery trucks for the chemicals at the plant. That won't be as often. You'll also have, like I mentioned, the sludge handling trucks. And then I think one note about that traffic is the plant is going to control when the trucks need to arrive. So the town can choose and we can design it so they're not coming at 4 in the morning or something like that. We can have it during the day, business hours, and adjust to allow for that. And then just general traffic, we're looking at several different operators full-time to operate the plant. So we'll have parking on site and have their traffic. And this just shows what our preliminary design of the site looks like. So the orange are the sand beds, and that's where the treated effluent will be discharged. And then the kind of purplish buildings are the treatment buildings, but the one on the far left bottom, that's just, we had to move the salt shed for the DPW in order to put the sand beds there. And kind of that green area is, we're looking at stormwater infiltration basin to treat the stormwater on the site. Just going over timeline. So I think Rich will touch on it with finances, but we're looking for the vote in June if it moves forward. Then we're looking at spring next year, maybe March, April, to go out to bid. And then construction would start likely in the fall and take around 3 years. With that, I'll turn it over to Rich.
Thanks, Jackie. Good evening, everybody. My participation in this is largely on the finance side. Most of you know I'm the finance director for town, and this is an extremely complicated process. And it's also the most consequential decision I think this town's will have made and will make for a generation to come. So it's really important. It is so complicated because there's too many options and variables to calculate to any specificity that is 100% accurate to any one person. And so what I tried to do is boil this down so we can get to a general talking point, so you could have a discussion about generally what it means to you. And if you feel in discussions with your friends or myself or others that you need to adjust those estimates up or down, then you ought to do that, because I can't give every single person an exact answer, because everybody's answer is going to be a little bit different. So this is why we're trying to boil it down to some talking points and discussion points so we can move forward and have those discussions. But there's no doubt wastewater, whether you're doing it as a community solution with a plant or as individual IA systems at each of your homes over time, it's vastly expensive. And so that's why we've been working really hard for years to get to this point. And the key thing to making this even possible and affordable is participation in the State Revolving Loan Fund Program, SRF. We've submitted our plans, and SRF has approved, DEP has approved those plans, and we have made it into the SRF program. We didn't think we were going to make it into the SRF program, and we got a late notice, April, that we made it, which was great news because it's what we are going for. But what it also means is we need to let them know by June 30th whether we're in the program participation for this year or not. And so that's the kind of the rush here to get this to a town meeting so you can vote up or down whether we're doing it and we're going to participate in the SRF program. Jackie and I talked about this with our select board and felt that it really would have been irresponsible for us not to bring this to a town meeting and not to have this discussion because it is so costly. The decision point is so costly. So let me give you some general numbers on what it's looking like. Our current estimate for the project is $170 million. And if we participate in the State Revolving Loan Fund Program, the SRF, the best case scenario is that turns into a 0% financing, is about $5.6 million of debt service per year. The kind of the worst case scenario for the SRF participation, a little bit, not a 0% rate, but a little bit higher, is a maximum of about $9.8 million per year of debt service. Without SRF participation, our debt service is going to be over $15 million. So we're really focusing on if we're participating in the SRF, because if we're not, then we're probably not moving forward as quickly as we're contemplating now. One of the key points with the SRF program, if we were to enter it by this June, is that they currently are guaranteeing that they will fund our entire project, the full $170 million. They have told us and other communities in the state that that is not going to be the case for next year. They have received funding cuts from both the state and federal government and how they receive their funds, and so they're ramping down their programs accordingly. So there's no guarantee after this year that we'll get full funding, and matter of fact, we're very likely to receive less funding. Even if we were to have participation, they won't likely fund the full amount, which means that our best case scenario, or SRF, gets a little bit bigger, and our worst case scenario of having to go out and borrow this money on our own is going to add to that burden. There's also some additional benefits by qualifying for SRF. If we move forward, we received a notification, and we kind of were contemplating this in our planning, and it's been confirmed, that we'll receive 25% of our debt service paid for through the Cape and Islands Water Protection Trust. So instead of the 5.6 to 9.8, it really gets adjusted down to about a 4.2 to a 7.3 range $million per year of debt service. So 25% right off the bat is covered by the Cape and Islands Water Protection Trust. That leaves, in the best case, $4.2 million for us to pay for ourselves. We've been including this knowledge in our financial planning for several years now. And a matter of fact, you might recall the town voted to have a short-term rental tax up to 6%. Unlike several towns that used it for their operating budgets or for other programs, we have been carefully stewarding that money and putting in a wastewater stabilization fund. We now have several $1 million in that fund. This is going to help smooth out this transition. But we want to repurpose that amount of money, which is $1.5 million per year, to use to pay down that hopefully $4.2 million of debt service. We also have some other financial steps that we're looking to take. I'll be working with the Finance Committee and the Capital Projects Committee and the Community Preservation Committee and our Select Board, that by next town meeting you can expect to see some votes on those items. The bottom line, though, is after we account for all these funding mechanisms, property taxes in the best case scenario are about would increase about $100 from where they are today, or up to $575 in kind of the worst case scenario. So I had to pick something just to have a comparison. And so what I did is I picked on the very high end of that range, and I'm just assuming for my projections that our debt service is going to cost us $500 per year in additional property taxes, and that's on an average valued home, which is about $750,000 now. So that's a factor you might have to adjust in your mind when you're doing these comparisons. If you have $1.5 million home, well, then you have to double the 500. But the debt service on the capital project isn't all the costs. There are also operating costs to run a plant. And those have been estimated by our engineers and our OPM as approaching about $1.5 million a year. So I added that into the mix. Of course, $1.5 million today isn't going to be the same $1.5 million 20 years from now. So I added a 3% inflation rate. And the average annual cost of that $1.5 million, I didn't put down the exact number, but I did account for it in the 1.5 million adds $217 of taxes to the property tax rate. But when you use the inflation and average it out over that 20 years, the number I went with was a higher $292 of additional costs in property tax for the operating costs. So you add those two together, $500 for debt service, $292 for operating costs. It's $792. Just for talking purposes and have a nice, simple, easy discussion point to start, I rounded up to 1,000, a little bit of a cushion. Likewise, this is not a simple, and one of the complications to this is it's not a simple, yeah, I want to spend an extra $1,000 and have wastewater, or not. We're doing this because we have a mandate to clean up our waterways and remove nitrogen. And one of the alternatives, if we don't make progress, and what the new Title V regulations require, is that properties in nitrogen-sensitive areas have to start installing innovative alternative systems, IA systems. So what's the cost of an IA system? Skyrocketed in just the last couple of years. Just for some context, there's really only, as I understand it, 3 DEP-approved IA system manufacturers, and that they all have several months wait to get their system components delivered. We've talked to installers, we've talked to engineers, we've talked to colleagues in other towns, and we went back and forth on how to develop these estimates. But of course, IA system costs vary depending on your property. So again, we're trying to come to one number that we can all talk about, and we need to adjust accordingly from there depending on your property or your particular circumstances. But what we all ought to understand is that implementing an IA system, you have to hire an engineer to design and engineer that system. You need to purchase the system components. You need to hire an installation contractor. That contractor or yourself need to coordinate with other trades to connect to the home utilities. And then, of course, there's a lot of disruption and disturbance on your property, so you're going to likely want to re-landscape and repair that property. All in, we're estimating that the total of all these costs to be between $38,000 and $80,000. I recently talked with not a resident of Eastham, of another town that implemented an IA system for an average-sized 3-bedroom home, and he bought the nitrate system, which is generally considered one of the best systems, or the best of the 3 systems. And for his 3-bedroom home, his all-in costs were $60,000. For talking purposes, and I didn't want to scare anybody off when I started this journey and be accused of overselling it, I used $50,000 as our starting point. And furthermore, not only did I use $50,000, I assumed that everybody would get the $18,000 state septic credit to reduce that cost. But that's not the case, and I apologize in advance to our non-residents, but one of the eligibility criteria of receiving that septic credit is it has to be a primary home. So if you're a resident, you have available to you up to an $18,000 septic credit, but it's not refundable, meaning that you have a state tax liability. And you are able to carry that credit over for up to 5 years to get that liability, to collect back on the tax. But for the purposes of my estimate, I started with the 15. I took off 18 off of everything. which leaves us with, what is that, $32,000. So over the 20-year life of a system, that accrues to about $1,600 a year for the cost of the system. Just like the community solution having operating costs, IA systems also have operating costs. Each system will be required to have a maintenance contract that provides for quarterly inspection, sampling, testing, monitoring, and on-call repair. These contracts are estimated to cost around $3,000 annually, depending on the home and the system that you have in place. You can add in some additional costs, such as electricity usage and costs, some pumping, and a provision that you're going to have to set aside for periodic maintenance and repair that inevitably will be needed over a 5-year period. You might not need a repair every year. You might not need a repair this year, next year, the third year. But 4 or 5 years in, you will. So I've kind of averaged that out over a 5-year period. I added all those together, and I came up with over $4,300, and I rounded down to $4,000. And just like on the community system, if you start with $4,000, $4,000 today isn't the same as $4,000 20 years from now. So I added the same 3% inflation rate, and the average annual cost on the operating was $5,400, including the inflation. So same drill on this side as I did on the community solution. I add the operating costs on average to the installation costs, the capital costs on average, and that's how I came up with on this slide $7,000 annual cost for an IA system compared to the $1,000 cost for the community solution. Of course, there are any number of individual circumstances that will make that difference. So again, this was meant to be just a starting point for a discussion. And to whatever extent you want to be involved, you need to drill down on that, and I'm happy to talk with you about that. The other concern that I have is just practically speaking, how are we going to get the contractor? I mean, you can't even get a plumber. How are we going to get these contractors to show up to install, hundreds or thousands of these systems, even if we have 5 years to do it? How are we going to get contractors to show up to honor these maintenance contracts? Which brings up a whole other slew of items of cost that I didn't even factor into this at all, which is our health department will have to have a pretty robust inspection and monitoring and IA system, management system maintenance monitoring plan, which Hillary will tell you, which is going to take either a contract out to the county or some vendor or adding to our staff. I haven't even gotten into those at all. So that's kind of the binary comparison, IA versus community solution. If you are in the sewer area and we move forward, you will have extra costs. And so we're trying to be upfront about that too. You'll have to connect to the sewer system, and right now we're expecting that to cost between $8,000 and $16,000. Again, that would be eligible for that same Mass State septic credit. So just for nice round numbers, let's say your connection costs $10,000, you can get a 60% credit, and you get $6,000 back. So your out-of-pocket cost ultimately would be $4,000. To facilitate that, and to obviously you need the cash up front to pay the contractor, we're going to be partnering with the Barnstable County Aqua Fund, which is a loan program that will offer loans for sewer connections for 20 years between 0 and 2%, depending on your income. But the max is 2%. Like we did for the water project, we also will be, over the upcoming year, contemplating and designing and very likely implementing a connection assistance fund, just like we did for the water project, to facilitate those that need some extra assistance. And then finally, if you are connected to the sewer, typically that is associated with having a sewer fee, just like there is a water fee. You might recall my earlier comments. I baked in the full operating costs of the plant into that $1,000 tax rate. But I think there are very good, compelling reasons to actually charge a sewer fee. So likely we will, and that's a policy we've got to develop that I'll be working with the Finance Committee and ultimately the Select Board on. I always get asked the question, so I'm going to go out on a limb and give you my guess. Don't come to me a year from now and say I was totally wrong, but I think it will be in this ballpark. if I had to guess, we don't expect the 786 people in Phase 1 to pay for the full operating cost of the plant. We know that. So I would suggest that it's probably going to be a relatively modest or low-end sewer charge for residential homeowners, perhaps a bit higher for commercial taxpayers. And I would expect it to fall somewhere between $600 on the low end and at the max end, maybe $1,000 bucks. So we're talking $50 to $70 a month on average, and that would be billed similar to water, a quarterly basis. And that's my quick and dirty overview of the finances. And I'll turn it back over to Jackie, and she'll start soliciting some questions.
Yeah, I can open it up to questions. We'll go ahead and open this up to questions. If you come up, state your name, your address, and then we'll hopefully get one of these fine people up here to answer them for you, because, you know, we're no experts on this. We've been following this for many years, and we, you know, on the surface know some answers, but we'll leave it to the experts to answer.
Okay. My name is Dan Koppelman. For clarity, I'm a member of the Eastham Planning Board and the Eastham Community Preservation Committee, but tonight I'm speaking solely as a resident of Eldridge Drive. My property is located in the Wellfleet Harbor drainage basin. So basically, I don't have to do anything. We're okay. As well as probably the majority of the town residents will not have to do anything where they are located. I'm going to go in a little bit of history because you can relate to it. I've had over 40 years of experiencing designing and operating wastewater treatment plants, primarily in the state of New York and Connecticut. These areas created a very different financing than is being proposed by the town of Eastham. They created sewage works districts, and the district included the properties that were going to be served by the utility. That could be the central collection system and the AI systems that, you know, are on the property, but basically they could be done for a municipal district or a private district. They are created in order to tax just the people that get the service. That's a very important issue. And the reason it is basically when you provide sewer service to a commercial property or to a residential property, you are creating significant increase in value to those properties. In the case of commercial, it's millions. Believe me, I know, because I design treatment plants for commercial facilities that cost multi-million dollars. And for residential, Rich has already pointed out, it's going to save you around $60,000 in your own IA system. So my question is, why should all of the residents of the town of Eastham pay to fix residential systems that they would have to fix on their own? I am for centralizing wastewater treatment. I'm just against the way you're presenting it to be paid for. So do I support the idea? Yes. Do I support your present way of financing? No. For example, and Rich has pointed this out, and rightfully so, I appreciate Rich's candor and his honesty in the system. Properties near the bay, none of which have to put in systems according to the plan, they're going to be hit with somewhere around $100,000 worth of taxation over the 20-year period. And they're not going to get sewer service. And I just don't think that's fair. So with my experience, the idea would be to create a taxation on the people that are going to get the use of the system. And certainly not to have the residents of the town pay to operate a system that they don't put any sewage into. Think about it. You're not creating anything that requires the cost of treatment, and yet they have to pay for somewhat of the operating costs. I appreciate the fact that you've looked at this 6 ways to center, but I don't think you looked at it this way. And I would like Rich to perhaps comment, maybe he can't, not tonight, but whatever, to see what difficulty it would be to modify the program, keep the same numbers as far as the construction costs and everything else, but make it user-paid rather than the entire town. That's my point. Thank you.
We've got, I think, a lot of questions built into that one question.
That wasn't really a question.
So maybe I'll start, and I don't want to steal Hillary's thunder because she's got probably the most important part of it that she understands better than I do. But there's a couple things that Dan brought up that were considered as part of the, first of all, I'm happy to look at an alternative payment arrangement, but I intuitively know that asking 786 people to pay for this entire system and a taxing scheme is not going to work. It's going to be prohibitively expensive. And I weigh that against the benefit that everybody in this town and our guests and visitors derive from having clean water that they can go into in Salt Pond and our estuaries. Everybody is benefiting from having clean water, but only 786 of these people have to do something immediately to help achieve that. And so that's, I think, an important point, and I'll let Hillary comment on that. But I just want to follow up on the betterment. We wanted to make this affordable. And the best way to make this affordable is to spread it amongst the community, derive the benefit of clean water. And we chose to not do betterments to residential properties other towns have. Orleans has. You have a connection fee, you have a significant betterment. It's becoming cost prohibitive for Orleans residents. That being said, I'm not necessarily opposed, and we haven't ruled out a betterment program on the small side for commercial properties, because certainly they will benefit from having to be able to connect to town sewer and get rid of their very expensive IA systems that cost them a lot of money, have a lot of maintenance associated with them, and take up land that they could otherwise use for their restaurant or for their store or whatever. So I think that's a fair point. And the only other thing I would say is I don't think, and this is the leeway to Hillary, that it's safe to assume that there is nothing that people outside of the sewer area would have to do, as this is just phase one, and as we go through time, Hillary will need to work with the DEP to develop nitrogen removal goals for the rest of the town. And as long as we're making progress on our targeted watershed management plan, we've bought ourselves upwards of 30 years to execute that plan and mitigate all these other issues. And sorry, Hillary, I'll let you go from there.
So when we apply for and receive a watershed permit, it's for a minimum of 20 years. So this is our plan for the next 20 years. At the same time, the first part of your comment about the Wellfleet Harbor watershed, we are responsible for nitrogen flowing into the Wellfleet Harbor watershed also. We've been collaborating with Wellfleet. We don't yet have a plan in place for what that looks like, but we do know that we are responsible to mitigate the nitrogen flowing into Wellfleet Harbor from Eastham residents. So we know that Wellfleet's plan at the moment is IA systems. That's what they're looking at to mitigate nitrogen. We do not yet have an agreement with them on what the town of Eastham will be responsible for, if our residents will need to put in the IA systems, or if we will pay them some amount of money so that they can mitigate the nutrients. Sure.
It's a question, Daniel, not a statement.
If a resident in the Wellfleet Harbor drainage basin is ultimately required to put an IA system in, are you saying that the system would be something the homeowner would have to pay for in addition to the central system that he's paying for that he doesn't get to use?
It depends. I don't think we have that information yet. We don't know what that plan looks like, so I don't want to give you any misinformation. The other piece that I take away from your comments, Dan, is just what makes Eastham so special, and that is our natural resources, and that is something that we all share in the town, whether you're in this watershed or you live along the bay. We know that it's the ponds, it's the estuaries, it's the Bay beaches. We know that's why people come here and why we all want to live here. So I do think the responsibility falls upon all of us to keep that and to keep those resources in their best state possible.
All right, anyone else from the audience have a question? Please, come on up.
Sarah Clark, Malls Pond Road. I do have a few questions and a couple of comments. I did notice that you had said that the Tea Time property is not applicable, sorry, I'm a little short, because it's in a water resource protection area. And it's hydrogeologically not feasible. According to the town's GIS map, which I happen to have a copy of, Tea Time is in the beige area. The Water Resource Protection District is here. It's approximately 12,000 feet away from there. Is there a setback to the Resource Protection District?
Zone 1 and 2.
Yeah, it's Zone 2.
Do you want to talk about that, Hillary, or do you?
I was just going to pull up the slide, oh, and it's up here. So you can see how the water travels. So being in the Zone 1 means you're in the closest area to the drinking water wells. Being in the Zone 2, you're farthest set away, but it's still an area that's tightly regulated. And what the hydrogeological testing showed us, and that's why this slide is important, is the amount of time it takes the wastewater to travel to our wells. And so if you look at the Tea Time property, the time it takes to reach the wells could be 10 years to the District G well, or 28 to 112 years to the Nauset Regional High School well. And at the transfer station site, it doesn't ever reach those two wells.
So I'm not saying that wastewater isn't important. I live in the neighborhood that you are looking to put this into. I know just based on, and this is a very low estimate, based on the properties in my neighborhood, we surround Malls Pond, we surround Minister's Pond. Our topography is going to require an E1 pump. That's an extra $5,000, just right off the bat. Then, if the power goes out, the capacity of the treatment before you have effluent potentially flowing back into your house is 1 to 2 days without a generator. There are 28 properties in my neighborhood based on the topography. I've lived here for 44 years, my entire life. These 28 properties, if they don't have a generator, within 2 days could potentially have sewage flow backing up into their houses. That's another $10,000. That's not estimated. So the $16,000 to hook up range really isn't $16,000 for the 782 residents that are most affected by this. And I would like to know, what is the town going to do? How are you going to help us? We've
So-
already been mandatorily hooked up to water. No problem. I understand sewage is important. The estimate of $60,000 for an IA system is not a real estimate. I've talked to health agents. I work for a town. I know what the going cost is. It's $30,000 plus $2,000 for annual maintenance. You look at the hookup, you look at what it's going to cost annually on your taxes and your sewage fees, and you have maybe 4 or 5 years, and you're already at that breaking point. I have a child that's going to be going to college in 4 years. I am a single mom. Please consider some alternative to help the residents that are also in this situation. Thank you.
So one of the questions I can respond to is, which she was referring to, and the number is order of magnitude of about 80 properties within this 786. And perhaps Ziad or Jackie, you can fill in on some of the details here, are in we aren't going to be served by gravity mains. They will require some sort of low pressure. So it does require a grinder pump, as was alluded to. So those 80 properties will need to have a grinder pump installed. We are looking to incorporate the costs of grinder pumps into our program so that that's not a cost of the person requiring to connect. You are correct, and this is where I can turn it over to the engineers perhaps, that absent some sort of alternative power source in a power outage situation, that's an issue. But as I understand it, you don't need a major generator that would operate your house. You need some sort of, it can even be a portable generator that you can easily connect that's a low cost, because you don't need to generate a lot of power to operate the pump, and that's probably a better question for you guys.
Yeah, I could take that. Hi, I haven't spoken yet today. My name is Ziad Kiari. I'm with Apex Companies. So you're right. The grinder pump, like Rich alluded to, that could be provided to the homeowner. But the cost actually all depends on how far the gravity sewer is from your property, right? So if you're, 10, 15, 20 feet away, obviously the cost would be a lot less as opposed if you're 100 feet away. But the flip side to that, it's a low-pressure sewer. It's a small pipe. It's pretty shallow. And generally speaking, it's a lot less expensive to install on a property. But yes, you're right. It could vary quite a bit depending on what the setback is and how far your property or your pump is away from the main line.
As far as the power source?
Yes. So the power source, usually these grinder pumps, they probably have capacity for about 175 to 150 gallons. So you're right. It could be a day or two depending on the usage. But there would be a connection, a transfer switch where the generator could be hooked up in a short notice, and then you could pump that up into the system. And it doesn't really take very long. Oftentimes, the homeowner would have to supply the generator, but the construction will supply the grinder pump and the transfer switch.
All right, we have someone online that wants to ask a question or make a comment. It's not coming in. All right, we're unable to promote them at this time, but we'll keep working on it. So we have a couple people up here to ask questions still.
Hi, Linda Glahn, 55 on Helens Way. If you can put the slide back up that has the cost of if we do nothing, community solution and the savings. Yeah. So this is looking at the costs, and please tell me if I'm wrong, over the next 20 years. The middle one, community solution, would be the hotel paying for it, but servicing less than 1,000 properties. The first column is the cost if all the homes put in the IA system. So isn't that comparing apples to oranges? One is everybody has to pay the 50,000 or whatever the number is, when we really don't have the whole town, my understanding is, has to put them in.
So I guess the answer to that is going back to the DEP regulations, the new DEP regulations. So basically, if we move forward with a community solution, a wastewater, which requires at least a small wastewater treatment plant, if we move ahead with that, then for 20 years, we are, all the other people not covered in this system, all those people in the left column, they may not have to do anything. Now, some of the homes may still have to do an IA system, but we don't know that yet. But if we don't move forward with this, then the left column comes into play 100%, and we don't get SRF, we don't get any payment, we don't get any assistance to pay for that. See what I'm saying?
So you're saying that if I was in the area, not in the area, because I'm not.
Right.
If I were to sell my home, I may have to put it in IA system. My reading was the Title V still applied to me unless I'm in the watershed area.
No, because if the DEP has accepted our watershed permit, if we move ahead, if we continue to make progress on our plan, then you will not have to. If we do not, and a no vote is definitely no progress, that's what they consider no progress, then yes, you would have to upgrade within 5 years to an IA system. That's the new DEP regulation.
So it's not just to those in the watershed area?
No.
Can I weigh in here?
Yeah, weigh in.
So if we don't move forward with this plan, as Rich said, we've done sampling all over town. So We don't have enough data to move forward on Boat Meadow, Herring River, Wellfleet Harbor. So those areas are still in question. So we have enough information, we've done enough scientific studies to know that this is the most logical place to start. We know that we've sampled other places. We know that there's a time and place to go back to that and develop additional plans. But we can only bite off what we can chew right now, and that's Nauset Harbor, which is the estuary that's in the worst shape. So if we don't receive this watershed permit and we stop today, we continue to evaluate our water quality. We continue to develop plans to mitigate nutrients and nitrogen. We continue with pond remediation projects and stormwater projects. The Board of Health continues to look at regulations to improve these areas. So what we know for certain is that if we move forward with the TWMP and the watershed permit, this is our plan, this is our path for the next 20 years. In the 21st year, will we have to do something else? Possibly. We don't know.
There are more than one watershed. We're sewering one watershed, but there are 4 others that we're responsible for. Does that make sense? We're responsible for Town Cove, we're responsible for the rest of Nauset Marsh, we're responsible for part of Wellfleet, we're responsible for Rock Harbor, and we're responsible for, what's the other one?
Boat Meadow?
Boat Meadow.
So in the future, we may be looking at other, more treatment plants, expansion of this one to service those other areas?
Right now, the expansion is Phase 2, which is
Rock Harbor.
10 to 20 years away, and it's south. It's south Eastham
In the Rock Harbor area.
and in southeast Eastham.
All right. I still have to say that I think you're comparing apples to oranges when you're comparing the cost of every single house putting in an IA system to a sewage system that serves less than 1,000 properties in the town.
Not to go back and forth too many times. We're doing this to avoid all those other properties having to put in an IA system. So we're sewering one area, and we're all paying for it, because that's the community solution that will help you and protect the rest of the watersheds to not have to do that.
I also think it's
So
important.
Are we in it together, or are we in it as individuals? That's the decision.
I also want to add one important point that we haven't brought up yet, is we know that we need sewers in these watersheds to remove the amount of nitrogen that we're charged and responsible for removing. We also know that IA systems will not meet that requirement. And so if we go forward and don't do a centralized sewer system, and everybody decides they want to do their IAs, well, guess what? What will be coming down the road would be some sort of administrative consent order or a third-party lawsuit that will force us to build a plant. So by moving forward with this plan, as unpalatable as you might think it is, it leaves it in our control. And if we lose that control, loss of control translates into untold amounts of dollars.
All right, we have the person online now. I'm sorry? I'm sorry, you had
I
one
just
more.
wanted
Okay.
to add just some food for thought here also. A standard Title V releases about 35 milligrams per liter of nitrogen. A standard general use IA system is held to 19 milligrams per liter, so that's about half of what a standard Title V is emitting. Some of the more advanced IA systems are capable of getting nitrogen down to around 11 milligrams per liter. That's the Nitro and the Nitrex, which I think Rich was alluding to, and the ones that Wellfleet is looking at. And a sewer system is going to get us down to 3 milligrams per liter. So I think that's just important food for thought when you think about the future.
All right, thanks, Hillary. All right, we have someone online. Please state your name.
Hi, it's Andrew Gottlieb. I'm the Executive Director of the Association to Preserve Cape Cod. I'm speaking to you in part for my role there. Also, I used to run the SRF program when I was at DEP, and I was a Mashpee Select Board member during the time when we were grappling with a lot of the issues that you're grappling with here. My reason for joining you this evening is to commend the town for doing the hard and necessary work to address the water quality needs that you have. You have an exemplary record, first in dealing with your water supply issue and now taking on this extremely complex wastewater issue. I think your plan is well thought out. It is not without challenges and not without costs, but based on the work that we have done and we have seen working with all 15 towns, I think it's fair to say that eventually you're going to have to manage your wastewater through a central collection and treatment facility. Rich and Hillary just made a really important point that the DEP regs, if you do not advance this program, will impose upgrade requirements on your individual homeowners that we know will not meet the water quality standards and will not see water quality restoration that you want. And that would put you in the position in the future of having to go back to your voters who've incurred those costs to put in individual IA systems and then ask them to do the project that you're doing now. You'll be likely doing that under an administrative consent order, and having been involved in writing the DEP regulations, your enforcement, being under an enforcement action would preclude you from getting the 0% loan that you currently qualify for from the SRF. You would have to pay the interest rate. That interest rate will be significant over the life of your project. And that reality means that right now, especially given the funding challenges that are coming down the road at the SRF program, your opportunity to implement a solution that we all know you're going to have to do eventually is never cheaper for your residents than it will be right now. The SRF program is under a lot of pressure. The expectation is that there will be less money available next year and the year after at least, and likely into the moderate future. You have a position on that funding list right now that a lot of other communities competed for across the state and didn't get. To lose the opportunity to access the money that you currently have set aside for you, both the state level and through the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, would be looked back upon in the future as a critical mistake that the town made, and one that would ultimately cost you more money. So I really encourage you to move ahead with this. Your best chance to do this at the lowest possible cost, not no cost, but lowest possible cost to your community members, is to advance this project now at your June town meeting and to do the debt exclusion necessary. Moving back from the APCC role, I will tell you, having done this in Mashpee recently, the issues that you're dealing with about grinder pumps, Mashpee did the same thing you're proposing to do here, which is to assume the cost of the grinder pumps. Mashpee, like you're proposing to do here, did not go the betterment route except for condominium projects in a very limited way, because we determined at that time that there were community-wide benefits to moving ahead with a project like this, even though not the entirety of the town would have to connect to it. And part of the reason this is an economical way to go is because you get higher levels of treatment through your municipal treatment plant, you have to manage and control the wastewater from fewer homes than if you have to do it through individual alternative-based systems. This is just simply the right way to go, and I would really encourage you to support this at your town meeting and to move forward with this project. It's in your community's best interest, and it's in the Cape's best interest writ large. The last thing I'll say is, because of the Cape and Islands Water Protection Trust Fund combined with the zero interest loans, both features are almost exclusively, and in fact, the Cape and Islands Water Protection Trust Fund is exclusively available to Cape communities. It is less expensive to build a collection system and a treatment plant for Cape Cod than it is anywhere else in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. These are opportunities that have been put in place over a long period of time by the legislature, successive legislatures, and successive governors to enable communities like Eastham to have the opportunity to do this in a way that is more affordable for our residents than would be the case if you lived off Cape. So there's a unique opportunity here to take advantage of funding that is not available to anybody else other than Cape Cod communities, and it would be a shame to squander that opportunity. I thank you for your time in listening to my comments today.
Thanks, Andrew. All right, we have a gentleman up here who would like to ask some questions.
Tough to follow that eloquent presentation. Craig Torrey, 575 Old Orchard Road. I understood Hillary to say that the DPW was not in the Zone 2 for the town water supply wells. The GHD study, I'll quote a couple of lines from page 71. All 3 locations have the significant drawback of being located within one or more of the Zone 2s of the town's new water supply wells. Also, each site is within areas of influence for the town's new drinking water supply. How do you reconcile? And I know the chart said it was 25 to 129 years before it affects the town well.
Yeah,
But
I believe she did say it was in the same zone when,
They're all 3.
yeah, they're all 3 were.
okay. The GHD study says that it's a significant drawback to the town wells to be placed in to all 3 locations.
So these are the only locations we have. The town of Eastham is not that large. These are the only municipally owned sites where we could possibly site this.
Understand all that.
And this solution at the transfer station is capable of treating the nitrogen down to 3 milligrams per liter. So we could treat it down lower if need be, but this is the best form of treatment we can get in the best location we can get.
If it's a significant drawback to place, for the town well to be placed, any of the town, how far are the town wells from the DPW site? A mile minimum?
Look at the chart.
No, I mean, how many miles? Maybe it's 1 mile from each of, there are 3 water supply wells. How far, what's the distance between each of these 3 wells to the DPW site? I'm guessing a mile approximately each one.
I don't know that the distance to the well site matters. What matters is the hydrogeologic work that shows the travel time.
Okay. What then is going to be the drawback, if any, on the local community's wells, the private wells?
Well, all of the wells surrounding the transfer station are required to be connected to the municipal water system from several years back when that order was put in place by the Board of Health. There are two outliers. One is going to be connected shortly. The pipe's been run to their house. So there is no one within the radius of the transfer station that would be drinking a well, from a well.
I mean, I live in that radius, and I know a lot of people who are not hooked up to the town water. I mean, what is the percentage of hookups in the?
575 Old Orchard Road?
Yeah.
We'd go back and check that, but
What percent of the town is hooked up to town water?
I don't know that number.
I've heard it's in the 30%.
Little more than
A
half.
little more than 52%. But, you know, I'm no scientist or engineer, but I'm a very pragmatic and practical person. And I don't understand this question, so if somebody on the panel can explain it to me as well. If you have a private well and you're drinking, and we have nitrogen leaching into our groundwater, you're drinking that nitrogen. We're
Removing it.
I don't understand why that's even an issue within the Zone 2 for DEP. It is a DEP requirement, but we're treating it down to 3 milligrams or less of nitrogen and recharging it through sand filtration beds. So by the time it gets back into the water, it's clean, much cleaner than what it is now. So I don't understand the issue with it getting to wells, honestly.
My private water well, the water tests fine, and I hope it stays that way.
It will.
It should be if it's.
Wait, Hillary?
It will.
Hillary, is there extra DEP requirements when you put a plant in a zone 2?
So there will. Yes, there's a number of sampling requirements from DEP that our plant will be subject to. We have not yet spec'd out the sampling protocol. We've talked about it lightly, but that would be the next phase of our development.
And that's different than if it was not within a zone 2?
Correct, correct. So we do sample around the transfer station now with Verdantis, and we have had some preliminary conversations with Verdantis and Apex to develop a sampling plan to sample those wells and perhaps some additional wells prior to the plant going in and then after the plant goes in, so we can get better baseline data and then data moving forward.
Separate topic on the map here. How were these green, light green, tan areas determined? Were there water tests?
The phase 1.
Phase 1.
So the dark green is the watershed. If you see the blue lines, this is the phase 1. Yeah, so the dark green is a watershed line. All of those properties are within the watershed. The tan lines are phase 1 max. So that's the maximum of how far we can go. They're not absolutely required to mitigate our nutrient flow into the estuary, but it makes sense. It's a sensible route. So what we don't want to have are just hard stops. We want to make loops. We want to make the collection function as best that it can. And then the light green are salt pond recommended. So those are areas we want to go to collect nitrogen because that covers a lot of our commercial properties, and we want commercial properties on this system so that we can treat their nutrients.
I'm asking the question because I know people are going to vote based on what color their parcel is in.
Well,
And is this firm? Is this final? Is this going to flex? Is somebody going to pull a Donald Trump Sharpie and change it on the map, or?
no, I think, this is the best we have, today. We're refining our plans every week. We meet every week with our design engineers. We talk about specific scenarios. We had one situation recently with a property that came before the Board of Health. They were abutting this district, but they were so close. They are on a sensitive area, an environmentally sensitive property, and one of their systems was in failure. So in this scenario, we were able to extend the line a little bit to get them into it because the outcome is better for the property owner. So it's not black and white, but, it's being refined as we speak. So speak now if you want to be included. We'll see what we can do, but we want the best solution for our natural resources, and that's why we're all here.
But we're talking
Thank you.
ones or twos, not neighborhoods.
And
Yes.
I guess if we go back to the water discussion, these are all issues that we dealt with after the vote on water proceeded. For instance, there are policy issues that come up as we're doing the final design and walking towards construction, one of which is, to the neighborhood, were we going to mandate that the neighborhood connect? Yes, we had 540 properties that we mandated to connect. The select board made a decision, I want to say a year or so after the vote, that we would include that in the contract so that none of those mandatory area people had to pay for their connection to water, nor was there a connection fee. So there are policy issues. There are things that we can try and do, like include the grinder pumps or do things like that. But, ultimately, there is going to be a finite district, and this is our best guess of where that finite district is right now. I would think it would go, if anything, we'll add more rather than subtract less, but we can't add too much more.
All right, any more? Oh, another question?
David Ross from Glacier Hills Road. It's just going back to
Can you put the mic up? Yeah.
everyone else is so short. It seems the siting question is about the discharge to the wells and 3 years up. You've just said that we're putting cleaner water into the ground, that it's going to be nature filtering through sand. You know, that's one of the reasons I think he talked from Mashpee. Cape has got a very sandy base versus clay base other parts of the state. So what is the minimum threshold to cite something in terms of the flow? Is it because it's got to be 30 years before it reaches, or is the 3 years acceptable? In other words, it seems like we backed into you keep saying it's because look at these discharges, the transfer station and 2 of the wells. What is the minimum threshold for the flow before it
Okay,
hits a well?
so in 2022, we studied all these parcels. We couldn't study, we studied all the parcels we could. Town meeting gave us some funds to do the testing, because the hydrogeological work is extensive, and it's expensive. So we did testing on all the sites. Then that data informed where we could go. For instance, Tea Time was at the top of the list for recharge for a year until we got the testing back, and then it was like, no, it's not good. It's not good because it travels too fast. And once you have these markers that the DEP can look at, they want us to go to the most favorable spot. They do not want us to say, like, for instance, we'd have to give them additional data to say, okay, even though the DPW site is the best site for travel times, we want to go with this other site because of A issue, B issue, C issue, D issue. And then they would talk back to us and ask us to do more testing.
So, but what is the number of years that's acceptable?
Well, I don't think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think DEP was willing to permit either of those other sites, were they?
I don't know, we didn't get that far. We looked at the site that gave us the best numbers, and that became the site.
And it's not just travel.
We also, if you recall, met with DEP, don't remember who was with us, but GHD, and I believe you two were both with us. And they asked specifically, did we evaluate other sites? So we gave them all of the hydrogeo information, and this was the one site we landed on. So what that specific travel time is, I don't know, but this is the best case scenario.
Hello, my name is Christina Erickson. I'm at 1 Winsong Lane. I have a question just for clarification, just trying to follow in my mind, and others might be as well. If it is a no vote and does not pass, it was mentioned earlier, I think by Rich, that homeowners in nitrogen-sensitive areas would have to go to the new technical, fancy, and expensive septic system. So what's the time frame on that? Say it's a no vote. Will the whole town have to plan to go? Will it start in these nitrogen-sensitive areas? Are we all looking at new septic systems? I don't understand that.
I think we would start in the nitrogen-sensitive areas, so we would start with the Nauset Estuary, we would start with Wellfleet Harbor because they have TMDLs, and then it would fall to the Board of Health to determine what the best next route would be, because what we don't want to have is ponds that are dying and being closed. We don't want to have any of those environmental concerns popping up, because why are we here? So I think we would start with where we know and we have the scientific evidence, and then the Board of Health could institute regulation. DEP would involve themselves because now we're not following our letter of intent, and we would be faced with some type of administrative consent order coming from the state. What does that look like? We don't know, because we haven't seen that happen yet across Cape Cod. So, your guess is as good as mine. I have an inkling, but I certainly don't want to test it out.
So, and Hillary, we have definitive ruling on, I forget, on 2 of our watersheds that they are nitrogen-sensitive areas.
Rock
And
Harbor, Nauset Estuary, Wellfleet Harbor.
So, the regulation as it is written and as it stands with DEP those 3 watersheds within 5 years of probably, probably not from when they issued it last year, but probably when we say no to implement IA systems. I think that is very definitive likelihood. Then what would require is our health department to work with DEP to establish nitrogen removal requirements in all the other watersheds and receive a determination if those are in fact nitrogen sensitive areas. And we think that is probably likely, at least for parts of them. And then that would be a not quite as urgent as the current NSAs, but then would be evolve over time, and then they would have to follow suit. Again, keep in mind, we know IAs are not going to remove enough nitrogen to meet our overall TMDL requirement, period. And to Andy Gottlieb's point from the APCC, this system was constructed to the minimum amount of area that meets our need. If we're not removing it to 3 milligrams mgs of nitrogen or less, and we're only getting 19 or 15, then that need is going to expand because we're going to have to remove more nitrogen. And we already know from all the modeling and testing that that's still not going to meet what the requirement is.
Thank you.
And one thing, Rich, or Hillary, somebody could add, is the IA systems for the part-time residents don't perform well if they're not used on a regular basis.
Well,
And that's over half our town. So.
yeah, so we are working with service providers to get the seasonal systems to function better, and we have seen improvement over time. So in my mind, we gave a presentation several months back now. We called it a cesspool workshop, and we reviewed all of the IA systems in the ground at that time with one of our residents who crunched the numbers and did the data. And what we found was that some systems, some brands, types of systems, function better than others, and it was less about the seasonality of the home and more about the type of system, the service provider, who you have your contract with, and how you use your home. So it's interesting, the data's out there, the video's on the website.
All right, thank you.
But I think that translates into higher operating costs for people that aren't going to be here year-round because they're going to rely on their service provider to do that work for them.
So can I ask
Suzanne
a
has
question?
a comment.
A follow-up on it. So we're kind of at a point where doing nothing isn't really an option, right? And so we could not do this plan and go for trying to get people in the nitrogen sensitive areas to have IA systems in the next 5 years. And if that's not met, is that when the state would, what did you call it?
Consent order?
Is that
An administrative consent order.
so like if we weren't able to get enough property owners in those areas on board with those systems within 5 years, the state would,
Yeah, we would be required.
that the decision tree down of like.
Yes, sort of, except it falls more on the local level. So we would be required to issue orders to property owners. We then follow up with a lengthy enforcement process where the goal of enforcement is always compliance, so that there's non-criminal citations, there's tools in our toolbox. Are they effective? Generally not. So I think the town would spend a decent amount of money chasing these homeowners down one by one by one by one. Public health is interesting, where sometimes it takes a really long time to gain compliance. We continue, we fight the fight, and we eventually get there. The state will lose their patience with us, like you saw with the water system. So if we're not acting fast enough, they will issue an administrative consent order, and we will say, well, here's everything we've done, and they will determine if they will do more or let us continue down this path. So when I said we haven't seen it on Cape Cod, we have not seen this happen yet. I'm fearful. I don't want to be the first. I don't want to walk down this road with them. They're great people, but
Hillary, not to be devil's advocate, but has any town said no to wastewater treatment on the Cape yet?
No, I think towns have put up pretty big arguments. They've gone back to the voters more than once. But my fear here is that we have an opportunity that's not going to be here next year. And I think what we didn't really elaborate on in any of these information sessions was just how hard we had to fight to get onto the SRF funding list. We submitted our application to the best ability that we had, and we fell below the red line. And I think that crushed us all a little bit because we understand what's going on with the finances of the SRF and how money is becoming less and less, and there are more and more and more projects being added because the funding goes across the Commonwealth. And so we engaged in a process where we had to provide testimony at public hearings to DEP. We had to go back and reevaluate sections of our responses in our application and redraft them and give them years of scientific data from, shellfish closures to nitrates in water from before the water system to make our case. And it wasn't an easy process to get above that red line, but we also knew if we were not above that red line now, we would lose the guarantee of funding for our entire project. And without a guarantee of $170 million over several years, we have no project because we can't have a collection system and no treatment plant. We can't have a treatment plant and no collection system. So in future years, we're not going to see this guarantee. When the draft SRF came out, they took out the guarantee of funding for multi-year projects. So every year, you will now need to compete for funding with projects across the Commonwealth. And that's why I think we're here. We have an opportunity that we're not going to have again. And I don't say that lightly. I care deeply about the environment. I have children. I have a family. We live on Cape Cod. I'm faced with the same thing. I understand the cost of this, and I understand the cost of doing nothing. And we can squabble over IAs all we want, but they're not going to solve the problem. So we have a really unique opportunity right now in front of us that we're not going to have again. And I think that's why we're all here. We're passionate about what we do. We care about the town of Eastham. And is it perfect? No, it will never be perfect, but it's better than the other options in front of us today.
All
I
right,
just wanna
thanks, Hillary.
add,
Do we have anyone else that has any questions? Oh, sorry, Rich, did you want to say something?
No.
Okay,
I'll get it in.
okay.
I have a ton of questions, but I think my first one is.
Could you state your name, please?
Yeah,
and where you
Lynn
live?
Kathy Bridge Road. My first question is, when this is all complete, will it be able to handle the whole town being hooked up?
No,
Okay,
never.
so what happens when we go 10 years down the line and all these septics are failing and we're having problems and it's leaching and we need to hook everybody up?
So right now, the plant's designed for phase 1 that we've talked about and phase 2, that's south Eastham, Rock Harbor. That gets us 20 to 30 years down the road. Hillary says 20, I say 30. A lot can happen in 20 to 30 years. So technology will change. IA systems might become more affordable. They might be more effective. But what also might happen or will happen is our neighbors will know where they stand better too. Right now, it's very difficult to work with Orleans because we could send some effluent to their plant and ask them to recharge it for us. But they don't know if they've got the capacity for their own town because they're facing a 13-phase plan.
Right. And
So-
from what I understand, they're already, think they're going to be about 78,000 gallons a day below what they need right now.
So I'm not
Phase
sure,
2.
but I guess my
That's what
point
I
is,
read, so-
that far down the road, who knows what can happen? But, we're hopeful that if we need to do more in the future, if IAs or whatever the technology 20 to 30 years from now isn't effective, that we can count on one of our neighbors that we
But
can
it-
work in
But it
agreement.
could be quicker than that, right? I mean, by the time,
Not likely.
could be 10 years and we're looking at this again, we have to double it. Correct. But then if we know we're going to be a community that has a sewer system and things start to go wrong, I mean, we got water everywhere, and we're just talking about 3 places. It's likely everybody's going to have to do it at some point. So now we've built this whole place We've spent 178 million, and we're going to be doing it again in 10 years. We're going to have to add on, we're going to have to find another place, and then the funding's not going to be there then.
No,
Maybe just want to kind of wait,
the answer is no. We don't think we're going to expand beyond
Well,
2 feet.
I know you don't think it, but it's a possibility.
Well, and part of it is the hydrogeological efforts, and Dan mentioned it to it earlier. Flows that flow out into Cape Cod Bay aren't as sensitive flows that flow in and don't need to be remediated as much as flows that flow into a closed estuary like Salt Pond.
And what do you do for remediation, like, right now? Why aren't we looking at other ways to mitigate nitrogen? Why aren't we looking at,
We have been for 16
such as what?
shellfish beds, permeable reactive barriers, stormwater.
Do you have permeable reactive
Yes.
barriers?
Yes.
Okay, where are they?
Salt pond.
Just at Salt Pond?
Yes, they're
Okay, and that's still contaminated?
Yes.
Yes. 85% of the nitrogen that is in our groundwater comes from home-based septic systems.
But there's
So-
not that many homes around Salt Pond.
Because it flows through groundwater from a distance. So,
That's a
we can look
large
at we can look at stormwater, we can look at environmental impacts, we can look at fertilizers. The
Yeah,
total of all those
absolutely.
make up 15%. So even if we do all those things, it's not enough. We still need to remove nitrogen from home-based septic systems.
I completely agree we need to get out. I mean, is there cohog beds, and we need to be doing just other mitigations? And what happens with all the chemicals that are going to go in there when it goes back into our groundwater? Do we have other chemicals in there? So the nitrogen's going to be down. From the research I've done from what the state is requiring, the regulation, it says that it needs to be best available nitrogen-reducing technology is what they're going to require. Doesn't say IA. It says that those available reducing technology. And that is defined as having the capability to achieve effluent levels of 10 milligrams per liter or better. So you guys are saying 3 is going to be the wastewater. And then it gives links to companies that do aerobic treatment units on your septic, performance-based treatment systems, in-ground nitrogen removing biofilters. These can all be put on your septic system. Yes, so why aren't we looking to, I'm all about the groundwater. I want fresh water. This person failed. We need you to fix yours. You failed. Let's fix yours.
We do that.
You do.
So
Okay,
we do
so-
that. That is a function of the health department.
Okay, and so are people repairing that?
Absolutely. Anytime a septic system fails, they're ordered to upgrade. When a property transfers, there's an inspection done. If the system's not functioning, it must be upgraded.
So then these aren't
If-
leaching out nitrogen.
Well, they are leaching out nitrogen because that requirement for best available nitrogen technology gets stayed while we're pursuing this watershed permit. So
Why
there are
don't you
certain.
require these aerobic treatments?
We do require them in certain scenarios. You can read about it in the Board of Health regulation. When you're on a environmentally sensitive lot, when there's a variance to your well, when you're proposing a construction project and your nitrogen loading is above what your lot is capable of, the capacity of your lot, it's required anytime you need to upgrade a septic system and your two direct abutting lots are 20,000 square feet or less. So these systems are required. We're not requiring 10 milligrams per liter or less systems yet because they're not general use yet. So the board has not been comfortable requiring those. We're requiring the 19 milligrams per liter.
Okay, so do you have houses in town that have used some of these?
Yeah, as I said previously, we did a whole workshop. There's a whole video of every system in town, how it's functioning, what the sampling results are, which systems function better than other systems. We also, as a Board of Health, are discussing cesspools and coming up with regulations for cesspools, but we first wanted to see where the cesspools were in town, so we have all of that mapped. The Board of Health is reviewing regulations from neighboring communities. So it's not as though we're doing nothing. It may appear as though we're doing nothing, but we actually do quite a bit.
Yeah, and I know you guys do a lot. I'm just saying if there's so much technology out here, I mean, those are just 3 of the ones, there's other ones. why, I just don't understand, as, I know you guys are trying to get this 0% loan, but why aren't we trying other stuff? Why aren't we just,
Because the best available data that we have and that the state has is that the only technology that gets us where we need to go to remove a certain amount of nitrogen from our waterways is a centralized treatment and collection system. That's the only reason we're here. We've literally spent 10 years studying other things so that we didn't have to be here, honestly.
Yeah.
Nobody wants this. Nobody wants to pay for it. Nobody wants to install it. Nobody wants it. We have to do it. Every other town in the Commonwealth has centralized systems. We don't on Cape Cod. We've gotten away with it for many, many years. And now it's really time.
I've been hearing about oysters for 20 years. I think every town on Cape Cod has looked at oysters as a solution to nitrogen removal. Even if it could be a thing, which it's not permittable,
what
you
about,
would have to have a whole program. First of all, it'd be this enormous basin. They do remove nitrogen, but you'd have to have so many that's just not physically enough land, A. And B, you'd have to replace them all out. You'd have to change them out. I mean, these are challenges. These all things sound like great ideas, but when you go to practically implement and make them as part of a management program that you can permit and get monitoring and compliance with, they just fall apart.
They're part of a solution. They're just a small part.
yeah, because I know that in Lonnie's Pond in Orleans, they're exempt because that's what they're using in a small
Because they have
enough
nitrogen
area.
removal in their plant, and that's a finishing step to clean up that nitrogen.
But in addition to that, there are a host of issues that come along with using oysters or clams.
Yeah, I mean, then they're going to be polluted oysters after.
Well, and when they hit the market, because there's a plethora of them at one time, all of your growers suffer a hit because they can't sell their product at the same cost. When a big storm comes in and takes out your reef, your product is dead. So there's a lot of intricacies with shellfish.
Your questions did bring up one good point I also wanted to comment on, because you mentioned, what about other chemicals? And when I talk about it's best to have this in our control, it's for a number of reasons. And other chemicals and other regulations that might come down the pipe because of those other chemicals, and I'm talking about PFAS, which most of us have heard about, is not too far down the line where regulations will be issued about PFAS and other chemicals, forever chemicals, contaminants of emergent concern, that we will be expected to treat. If we have a centralized treatment plan, we can modify that plant to treat those nutrients or those issues. We can't do that on however many thousands of individual IA systems throughout town.
I think my last question is, do you have a water quality report that you can put on the website? Because I looked up on the Cape Cod Commission and I found one, and nothing was even close to getting a, whatever they called it, nothing was close to the high end, to the low end of what was normal. So if we could be able to look at the water quality report so we know.
I did share that with another resident who was asking. The nitrogen comes out of the Mass Estuaries Project. There's a link.
It's in an appendix.
Okay, it's in an appendix, but you may have to do a little further digging to get the Wellfleet Harbor Estuary Project report and the town of Orleans, so for their different estuaries that we share, but the
There was
information
like
is
a
all
violation
there.
level, and we didn't come close to the
Yeah, if you look,
level.
if you look at the estuaries report, it specifically calls out the TMDLs and what we're responsible
All right,
for.
so there's a link somewhere on the town website?
If you can't find it on the town website, I think it's in the appendices, but if you want a more direct route, if you just Google Mass Estuaries Project, it'll pull up the TMDL reports for each community that has done one, and you could seek out the ones that you're interested in seeing.
Okay.
Or you could send an email, and I could just forward you the email that I sent to the other gentleman.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kathy Turner on Pinewood Road. I promise I'll be brief. First of all, I want to thank you all for a really thorough job. I think you laid out the options and the choices and the pros and cons of each, and you all obviously understand this issue well. So for that, I thank you for the time you put into it. one of the things I heard tonight, I feel I need to comment on, and it was something that came up about the state of Massachusetts reimbursing $18,000 for hookups. And I know Rich said that he did not believe that that part-time residents qualified for that. But I've looked on that website also, and what I saw, and it could have changed or I could be reading it wrong, is that you have to have earned income in order to get that rebate. And so people on the Cape who are renting their homes out, they have earned income. All your motel, everybody else, they've got earned income. The people who are going to be mostly hurt are the people who are trying to hold on to their homes as a family summer home. We've had our house for 40 years. My kids come out here, my grandkids, and I'd like to keep it that way. But if I'm faced with hookup charges like that, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to go and rent the house out, and you're going to have a town full of Airbnbs. And I don't think anybody really wants that, but we keep getting lambasted with all of these additional things that only apply to us. And it forces you into something that we don't want any more than you want. You don't want an Airbnb next door to you guys, but it's going to happen because these fees are not manageable for us. So all I'm saying is with the woman who spoke in the back, that her property had specific needs and problems, and that you said that you would look at that and try to incorporate it. I'm just asking that you don't forget about the part-time residents also and try to come up with some sort of a solution, because you're not leaving us options here, okay?
Well, a lot of the options aren't really our discretion, but doesn't mean we can't work on them. So let me explain this Mass State septic credit a little bit, and then I'll tell you some of the things that we're trying to do. I'm not sure if it's earned income, but you have to have state tax that's due. It's not a refundable credit. It'll only refund back up to your Massachusetts state tax liability. So for a lot of our people that are on fixed incomes, maybe they have a limited tax liability. Let's say, just for sake of argument, say it's $2,000. On my example that I mentioned earlier, if you had a $10,000 connection cost, you get 60%, assuming you're a resident, and it's your primary residence, you get that 60% of that back as a credit, so you get $6,000. But if you only have $2,000 of taxable income in year one, you only get to get that $2,000 back. But it does carry forward the remaining $4,000 up to 5 years. And so in my scenario, after 3 years, you'd get the full $6,000 back. That doesn't mean you didn't have to front $10,000, and that's why we're working with the Aqua Fund. And the Aqua Fund, if you're in that position, you could qualify for a 0% loan over a 20-year period. That's $500 a year, more than enough time to get your credits back. And when you get your credits back, you can apply them against your loan and pay it down. And if we pair all of that with the town trying to come up with another piece of the pie to make that work, we are looking, just like the water connection fund, to have a fund that would help supplement people that have that need to bridge that gap.
That are not getting reimbursed by other sources,
Right.
you know?
So-
You mentioned the Aquifer Fund. Is that open to people who don't live here year-round?
Yes, you just have to be a property owner.
Okay, thank you. And again, I hope that you will continue to remember that there's a part of this community, and it's not all the rentals, but it's those of us that want to make this our home who are really going to get killed here. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Pagos, 2080 State Highway. I'd also like to thank you all for the work you've done. It's an incredible amount of work. You should, if you have time, calculate the man hours, women hours that have gone into this. Just an incredible amount of work. It's unfortunate that this is so expensive and that it's such a sensitive financial burden. But I think if we think of it in terms of the decades, possibly centuries, that this problem has been occurring and we haven't been paying for it, it's now, I think, time to pay. And this is, I think you're doing the best you can to make it as economically feasible. I have two clarification questions. If we pass the wastewater plan, how long does it allow the rest of the town, not the phase one, but the rest of the town, to retain their Title V systems? Is it until Phase 2, and then you'll add some more, and at that point, the rest of the town can still maintain Title V? Is it the 20-year timeframe? So that's question one. Question two is, for people in the, not in the sewer connection area, you've listed on the second to the last page several residential property types that might have to do 1A systems, particularly if they're in, like, close to a wetland or a coastal bank or whatever. How long are those people protected if we approve the plan? Is the 1As for those special cases are they going to be required like in the next 5 years, or will they also get some kind of benefit from having the plan in place?
We'll split it up to keep it interesting for you all. And Hillary will correct me if I'm wrong. But the protection, so to speak, of the rest of the town survives the life of of the watershed management plan. So whether it's a 20-year plan or a 30-year plan, and probably a little bit beyond that. So yes, we are able to offer that protection because we are pursuing a solution identified in that plan that's been approved by DEP. That being said, there are exceptions to needing an IA system. I think there's 4 of them that Hillary can explain to you.
So the 20 years does not apply to those scenarios which you were just describing. So when your system fails and you're on an environmentally sensitive lot, you need to upgrade your system to the IA. That regulation is already in place. So the regulations that the Board of Health has in place now continue.
Okay, so if, in theory, if you are in a sensitive area and we pass the plan, then you could be asked to put in a 1A system, assuming your Title V does not fail.
And
Sooner than the 20 years? Or?
Depending on where you live. So if you're in the sewer shed, then you're not going to put in your IA system because the sewer line is going to come by. We would enter into some type of administrative process where there's an agreement in place that when the sewer line comes by, you hook up. You don't put in your IA system. If you're over on the bay and your system fails and you are right atop that coastal bank, you're going to put your IA system in because that's the regulation still in place.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
But are there 4?
There are,
Correct, Tim?
yeah.
So those are that's what defines your environmentally
Yes.
So an environmentally sensitive lot is within 100 feet of a wetland.
Resource area.
The 20,000 square foot lots.
Yep. Upside down on your nitrogen credit or variance to your well.
Okay.
Do we know what percentage of the town is in that group? You'll know. Is that half the town?
I'm Matt McConnell, 60 Deepwood. Just a clarification on that map. It says the Phase 1 max. Is that what it could be, or is it going to be? Like, I think where we are is in the yellow or tan areas they were calling it. What does Phase 1 max mean?
Max is, I might define the colors differently than Hillary. In my mind, my eyes see a dark green and a light green. So the dark green is definitely required. The light green just makes a lot of sense because you're going halfway down the street, you're going to go to the end of the street. And then the tan, or yellowish, is Route 6, and it sets us up for the second phase, but it also attaches largely commercial properties. That is not necessarily required, but makes a lot of economic sense because it's going to deliver a lot of flow that's going to make the plant operate better and lower the costs for ratepayers and taxpayers.
So Phase 1 max will be included in Phase 1?
That's what we're just calling Phase 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just going to have to get rid of that max thing.
Yeah, it could. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Bob?
One more question, sorry.
Behind you.
Voice from above. If the town votes yes, little, trial and error here. Are we also voting for the way we're funding it with no betterment? Or is that a separate decision point outside of whether or not we go forward with this project right now?
What we're asking to be voting is to approve it and to approve $170 million of borrowing through the SRF. How we fund it, we can decide later. At the moment, we've decided not to do betterments for residential, possibly for commercial, because they are realizing a substantial value by that. But those are, the funding details are things that we have time to flesh out.
Yeah, I would make a comment on that. Do we know how many homes are in the environmentally sensitive areas? Because it strikes me that if we vote yes, the town votes yes, and the folks in the environmentally sensitive areas are already going to have to put in the IA systems, then they're also,
No.
well, I think, didn't they mention 3 areas, watershed areas? That might be a
You're on a
different.
pond,
It's a
coastal
different-
bank.
That's a different,
So within a 5-year period, do we know how many of those townspeople are affected? Because they're going to get a double whammy.
no.
It
No,
wouldn't
that's
be the
only,
5-year.
only if your Title V were to fail, Bob.
Only if you're to fail. So, okay, that takes it off the table. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Good questions. Oh. You got to come to the microphone, sir, if you want to ask a question.
He
Well,
just wants us to explain what failure is, and I think that's a Hillary.
So failure is when you have to pump your system more than 4 times per year, 4 or more times per year, when there's pooling on the surface, when the system just fails to leach anymore. So septic systems are generally good for a time period of around 20 years. That's a generality. They don't last forever.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you all showing up.
Thanks, team.
Thanks for coming and sticking with us for so long.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, man, the questions you got answered?
Oh.
Hey, Mark. All right, we still have a little business to do, so if you could clear out, please. Thank you.
Nice to see Emma when we stopped by the restaurant.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't that good?
I hadn't seen her in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rachel and her got together and went up to P-Town for a day and stuff too. So yeah, it was nice to see her.
Cool.
How you
Yeah,
doing?
nice to see you. Good.
Hang in there.
Hey, Dale. Hey, Peter.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I put the message, she's got to get the report.
Yes. Then you're good. Unless you're going to do a massive construction project, or you're going to add an ADU, or you're going to do something. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, good. I'm so glad. That's what we're here for. Reach out anytime.
Yeah. Do you want me to? Okay.
Where's the gal?
All right. Just a reminder, we are going to be resuming our meeting, so if you don't mind bringing conversation to the hallway, please. Thank you, because we
It's
want to go home
also-
too.
It's also really lovely out, so you could go outside.
Okay. We lost Jerry. Okay.
He's in the bathroom.
Okay. You have the agenda, Amy?
We can vote him in and
Yeah.
we can volunteer him for things while he's not in the room.
Yes.
I've got to do the same thing.
I'll talk to you later.
Oh my goodness, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, get out. Get out, Ted. We're besties.
I know. Every time I see you, I think about it. It's great.
Weird thing that I do.
Do you have an actual map of like where the lift stations are going to be? Like what force mains are?
Yeah, actually, I just got it from,
Okay.
I was like, we're almost done, so I'm gonna hold it.
Yeah, I know. What is this? What is this now?
It's our ad campaign. And we might need some
Slides?
signs.
Signs. Oh, oh.
We have, well, let's wait till Jerry and Bob get back. We're in a slight intermission.
I mean, we could,
We could start
and
talking.
like, we have a quorum, we could just.
We could just vote everybody.
Sally Forth.
I make a motion.
Let's wait, let's
Okay,
wait.
we'll wait.
Sorry about the disarray.
Wait for the boys.
Okay. Do we have anything else? I don't have my agenda.
No, we don't.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine.
We have to sign something for Bailey Boyd.
Oh,
For what?
Salt Pond Neesby?
Bailey Boyd. You do, I think.
me? Just me? Okay. Something I have to sign.
It's a, one of those loan releases.
Oh, got it.
Okay.
Do we want to talk about these real quick? Everybody's here?
Sure. It's Kayla's thing, but
Okay.
basically, we have some.
Where did she go?
We are
To get the
looking-
signature?
We are looking to, now that we have really spiffed up the website, we've done this annotated, how do you find things? We've done a lot. We have reached out to the Provincetown Independent to see if we can purchase some ad time. So basically, these would be once a week between now and town meeting. It has a QR code, so you scan the code, it takes you right to the wastewater page, and then you can navigate around. It's not like vote yes, vote no, it's just, this is what you guys need to be thinking about, and this is all the information you need to make a decision, basically.
Okay.
So we can not do it, but, there are pros and cons to both, but, I'm
What's the
sorry,
c-
Kayla, I went forward and explained it.
What's the con to doing this?
Well, I don't think there are any because it is informational. It is not necessarily political. It's kind of like, wake up, we're doing this. So if you, for some reason, haven't seen any of the info sessions, if you haven't received any flashes, if you never watch a select board meeting, if you disregard the warrant that's going to come in the mail, this is kind of the last shot to get to maybe some people that we haven't gotten to. Part of our mission on this is to leave no public outreach opportunity behind, and we've certainly done that for the last couple of months. So this would be the final frontier of that. I'm sorry, do you want to say something?
I don't know what you said, but I would say that, my thought behind the Salt Pond Needs You or Nauset Marsh Needs You was just that I'm trying to make a connection with people that aren't necessarily technical or really into
Financial.
wastewater, but, they might relate with Nauset Marsh or Salt Pond and be like, oh, what is that? And then look for more information. I like the QR code option. I do appreciate that it seems like our population is like has a healthy awareness of QR codes, but I do certainly appreciate the fact that it'll take you right to where you need to be and you don't have
Right,
to
have to
try and
type in a
find it
long
on the
website.
website.
Some other people too have mentioned to me, I know the warrants are going to be mailed out, so that's going to be a big help. But to really get some kind of signage up, maybe on the police station, electronic sign, or even a banner at town, on the Windmill Green.
And do you want us to do signs? We could order some signs.
I don't know about signs, like yard signs.
Like that goes like, it's contradictory to
Yeah.
the mission of the whole thing that we're doing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think maybe at the windmill, a banner, just
Okay.
talking about town meeting, it's important, and then the police station, so getting both sides of the highway
Okay.
So wait, what would this be included with?
in a newspaper.
It's in the newspaper.
Oh, it is as is? It's going to be?
Well,
Well, no, we're deciding.
just an idea.
I guess my 2 cents on this, my only concern is by picking one place, I don't know if it's better to say something a little more general, like our
Well, Nauset
water.
Estuary, we have two, so one
Nauset
says Salt
Marsh.
Pond,
We have
one says
Nauset Marsh as well, so we were planning on doing
one week and then Nauset Marsh the second week.
I would say Nauset Estuary.
So we
Yeah,
talked
that cover
about
it a little
that.
more? Oh,
Sorry, I made
okay.
it.
So we talked about it just because estuaries, people are just like, what is that? This
I feel
someone
like-
could
right,
relate
we
with.
say it, but
Yeah, we
maybe
say
not
it, I
everybody
guess.
else says it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
just think of your normal person that goes day to day.
Nauset Marsh, they know.
Nauset Marsh, they know. Salt Pond, they know. Those are two places that people really care about. And what was the one that's closer to Orleans? Boat Meadow? No.
No,
No.
Rock Harbor,
Town Cove. I had
Oh,
Town
Town
Cove
Cove.
too, but Hillary said
which is all part of Nauset Estuary.
that's closer to phase 2.
Yes.
So we decided on these two.
Yeah, because we're solely responsible
Salt Pond is the only one that.
for Salt Pond.
So
And we're,
just-
I think Salt Pond.
So she said just, so you're thinking of just go with the estuary or the marsh?
Well, because
Right.
Salt Pond and then the marsh.
Your mic on?
If you're looking for feedback, I think this looks great. I would like to see another sign that has both of them on it.
Oh, we could do both.
I mean, it's not
Your-
5, it's only 2.
Your environment.
Salt Pond and Nauset Marsh need you?
Digitally, flyers, we can do whatever we want.
But there's only so much space in a newspaper
ad,
thing.
In a
yeah.
print ad, we only have a half page unless we want to do the full page. So I was trying to
It's
just keep
just
it very
me.
simple.
Maybe it's just like,
And I did, Jamie, Hillary had the same comment.
okay,
And then I explained it to her and she goes, okay, maybe I'm being too technical.
but but maybe not, right? Like,
Maybe
I just
not.
think of my meetings with Jared years ago and like, you know, it was, I don't know, I just don't know if that's the best one to use.
We could also
So I
do
guess
a,
that's what we have heard even tonight. We've heard, why are we spending all this money on Salt Pond? It's not about Salt Pond.
Well, it's solely
Right.
our responsibility though,
But,
Salt Pond.
but the mission
As a-
isn't about Salt Pond, and I think it's better to move the focus elsewhere, because I think this opens up a conversation.
could say, clean water needs you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Clean water, our groundwater needs you, our,
Our ponds need you.
yeah, our ponds need you, our beaches need you.
Our ponds really need us.
I just feel like people would
Yeah.
glaze over that at this point.
Yeah.
Like we're really trying to make a
Right,
connection
because
with
that
someone.
ponds aren't in this,
Right.
Malls Pond, but.
And that's why I didn't even put wastewater on it.
Oh, no, we don't want wastewater on
But I'm just saying I made it like,
it.
people have favorite places in Eastham, and I would say two of Nauset Marsh and Salt Pond are some people's favorites. And
they
so,
will
you know,
be addressed
people
by
that
phase one.
haven't paid attention at all might be like, oh, what's going on with Salt Pond? What's going on with Nauset Marsh? It's just meant for those people.
What the heck is this?
And Salt
They might
Pond,
click on it.
Salt Pond has regular shellfish closures,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
and
All right, maybe I'm,
it has been,
Salt
It
Pond
has
is
been
closed
a
6 months out of the year now.
Yeah.
yeah, and it's been a focus of, we have the permeable reactive barrier there. There was a lot of focus on Salt Pond when I was on the Water Management Committee.
We've tried to address it, and it
and-
just hasn't.
Same with the bay, is like it doesn't get the flushing, and so, yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's essential. It's something we could do without, but I think it's an added piece of outreach. I just want to put everything on the field. I just don't want to be, Wednesday morning in a depressive state because I think, why didn't we do,
Is that the day you retire early?
could be.
Yeah, if you're going for the newspaper and we want to do one clean shot,
Yeah.
I would suggest putting both Nauset Marsh and Salt Pond on the piece of paper.
Well, you were gonna do one week
One
and
week and one the other week, and alternate them. I think that,
It's not a,
And I
I'm
do
not going to
think-
the mat on this one.
Yeah.
It's just an idea.
I think the Independent is also planning on doing an article. I don't know who they've talked to, but.
Was it next week?
Whatever you guys decide, I'm sure is going to be good.
Will it print in color?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
And I can do as many variations on this. We could do one a week up until town meeting. We could do Salt Pond, we could do Nauset Marsh, we could do
only have
Nauset
3 weeks.
Estuary.
Yeah, it was
We
like
only have 2
two
weeks.
kind of covers.
I think
True.
covers.
I would do 2 Salt Pond, 1 Nauset Marsh.
Now we're getting favoritism.
Well, I think because Salt Pond, we are solely responsible for cleaning Salt Pond.
Okay, well, I get it.
I mean, I
And
suggested
again, once they
signs.
click on it, It's
Right.
really,
The whole.
It's just the hook.
it's just the
Yes,
hook.
it's just the hook.
What's going to get them?
And this is for someone that hasn't paid attention at all.
I mean, really, they have to be under a rock at this point.
And they'll get a warrant mailed to them, so.
This week?
The warrant should have gone out this afternoon in the mail, and they're being dropped off here tomorrow. And they'll go to all town buildings.
Awesome. I
And we
like
do
the one
have-
online.
Yeah.
Makes little page turning noises when
That's
you
that's
click on it.
Kayla. She does these
slick.
books that are so cute. I love it too. And I like it makes a noise. It goes.
Yeah, right.
It's the little things
All
sometimes.
right, so general consensus, good idea, bad idea?
Great idea.
Jamie? Suzanne, generally?
She just doesn't want Salt Pond. Otherwise, you think it's an okay idea.
Want to Nauset Estuary? What do you think?
I think anything, yeah, any other
Any other? Okay.
is my, but, you know.
I
can
had
talk
lunch
more.
at Salt Pond today.
I love Salt Pond.
Okay, good.
I got packaged there.
I think general consent, I mean,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
okay, if you won't die on the sword if we
No.
do Salt Pond and Nauset
No,
Marsh,
no.
alternating weekly, okay. Jerry?
Anything that gets the word out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a
Okay.
good idea, and
Suzanne?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
mhm.
All right, thank you. Where do I sign on this?
Thank
Just
you.
where it says by the town of Eastham?
Yeah, you're the town of Eastham.
That's all right. All right, last order of business, select board reorganization.
Oh, yeah.
I have a
exciting.
motion.
Just like to say, it's been a pleasure being chair, really. You've been a great, great board. Everybody does their homework, everybody's prepared, can't ask for more.
You've been a
As
great,
chairperson.
you've been a great chair.
Yes.
Really?
It's been a great
done
year.
well.
Really enjoyed it.
It's been, I feel like this year has been like
Whew, a lot of,
exceptionally challenging to
Yes.
navigate and, you know, I mean, you've been doing this how many years now?
it's my 15th now.
Oh,
whoa.
So I was gonna say.
Just about done.
Yeah,
I got one more year.
yeah, because
Well,
this is my,
you also started out tough. You've got to replace Art there
I know.
in the middle of the
know.
year.
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's been a path.
Did well.
Yes, thank you, Amy.
Yeah, thanks
you
for
all.
all the great years.
She's
Not done
gone
yet.
No,
Plus one.
Next
yes.
year, yeah. All right,
all right.
Jamie?
I would like to make a motion for reorganization. I would like to nominate Jerry as chair, Suzanne as vice chair, and Bob as clerk.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Any opposition, revolt,
Jerry,
whatever?
will you keep writing the letters?
Ah, good one,
I'll keep,
Suzanne.
yeah, I won't delegate that. I'll keep writing the letters.
Okay, great.
All right,
That's my motion.
any other discussion? All right, we'll call, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 5-0.
Yay.
All right.
Congratulations.
Well, Thank you.
I love it how you jockeyed for power and settled.
Yeah, we just really
I was
push
like,
around
Aren't we
here.
pushy?
It was tense.
Aren't we pushy? Yeah.
Made it through.
Oh,
No,
there have been some tense years,
There have been.
let me tell you.
No, there have been.
I've been right in the middle of it.
You literally, actually, I think.
do you need
Very unpleasant.
do you need a motion to adjourn and close your last meeting
Yes.
as chair?
I
I'll
will-
move
oh.
We adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Thanks a lot.
We are